Hey guys, TC Made with TC Gaming. I know it's been a while since I put out a video. For those of you who were keeping up with anything that I wrote out on the channel, I was having a little bit of health issues and had some other stuff going on with my computer. Long story short, I'm trying to get some videos back out for you. One of the ones that's been requested recently is for working with the Synty Modular Character Pack. Apparently in their new version there's some complications with trying to get that running, so I went through and looked for ways to make that work, and I came up with a couple of things that might help you. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. This is in 4.26. We're going to go to Games. And we're going to pick a third-person project. Pretty much default options here. And I'm just going to create one called Synty Modular. And I'll call it Synty underscore modular here as well. And I'm going to hit the Create Project button. And we'll just let that go and do its thing. Now, what the issue, I think, is that Synty may have changed some of their things, and it looks like the skeletons for the objects that are supposed to work with your character aren't really on the same type of skeleton that they had before. So if you go into your default third-person project here, when we hit play, obviously we run around as the mannequin, and what we want to do is we want to retarget the mannequin animations onto our Synty modular pack, and then use the randomly generated characters with that type of template. So the way that I normally do this is I would go and I would locate my Polygon modular hero character pack that I downloaded from the store. I buy my stuff from the Synty store. If you have the installer for the kit, you would build your third-person example project, and then you would go into your launcher and find the package and tell it to add it to the project. Or in the case of the way that one is, you might do a create project and pull other things in. It depends on which version you have. I'm using the version that I get directly from the Synty Polygon store. So if you have a different version and this doesn't work for you, leave me a message. Maybe I'll put up a video using another process for that type of thing. But basically, if you open this up and you go into the content folder, you would have your modular character folder here. So I go in and copy that, and then what I would do is I would go over here to my content folder for the project that I'm in and say show in Explorer, and I can just go right here in the content directory of that, right click and say paste. And when I do that, it's going to bring in all of the modular character content packages for that Synty pack. We'll let that load in, and then we'll take a look at what's been included with this. Apologize for being away for so long. Hopefully you guys have been staying safe and healthy yourselves. So now that this is loaded into the project, I'm going to go into the Modular Characters section, and under the Modular Characters you'll see that you have a BP for the modular character. This particular blueprint has all of the logic in it for creating a random character. Let's let this load real quick. Takes a second the first time. And let's just go here. If I right click and say close other tabs, we can actually go through and kind of look at this a little bit easier without all the noise. And you can go down to where the My Blueprint section is and pull that up. So inside of here you have your event graph, and under event begin play, what this thing does, it calls a function to randomize your character, and then another one to set the meshes. And so this randomize event, if we pull this up, it's a lot of stuff going on in here that they've pre-built for you. But the meat and potatoes of this thing is that you have, I'll try and blow this up a little bit, is that when you call the randomize event, it goes in here and it just basically looks at these array containers that are here that you've stored all of your different variables in. They did this for you, all your different variable head coverings or your hair or head attachments. If you were to expand this out, you'd see that there's a whole bunch of these here. And what this thing does is it basically gets an array from 0 to the last index of whatever's in there. So if you have 10 items, it'll be 0 to 9, and it'll pull those 10 items into an array randomly, and then it'll set the value of whatever that mesh is that it randomly picked. It'll set that on the head integer and tell it whatever that number is, so it knows which thing to load. And it does that for the head, the eyebrows, the facial hair, torso, upper arms right, upper arm left, etc. It goes down through there. Now on the actual character, under the mesh, you have holders, placeholders for these things. So there's a head, eyebrows, face, torso, exactly like you find in the other thing here. If you look under the viewport, this is what your character would look like by default, because these are all the 0 values of the character. If you go into the class defaults section, you can see all the different arrays that are in there. Again, they're also over here. And if you scroll down a little bit, or quite a bit maybe, there's a thing here that says random character B. So if you just toggle this back and forth, it'll just cycle through some random characters. You could also, I believe, manually go in here and update values for this if you wanted to. And so you can see as I'm changing certain aspects, how it's updating in the window there. So you can see it slowly updates. But like if I change arm upper, you can see it moving these values here. And same thing with arm lower. If I toggle through those, you see it's changing the different designs. But again, we can just randomize it. Now the randomize function, what that does, what we talked about earlier, is it grabs random values and throws them in there. And then there's another thing that takes all of those values and sets the meshes for each of our different character parts. And again, this is doing it for the lower arm, lower and upper arm, the hand, hips, etc., etc., etc. Go all the way through here. And one of the most important things when you have a bunch of different assets that are tied together this way is this thing called Setmaster Pose Component. I've talked about this in other videos, but basically Setmaster Pose Component will take whatever animation you're applying to the mesh and pass that animation data on to all these different targets that share a common skeleton and use it to animate those different parts with whatever the source animation is, so that your backpack moves with your body, your head moves with, or your hair moves with your body, your mustache, so on and so forth. Now, the one thing, if you go down through here, what you'll notice is that they left something out, and there's a little space in here for it. And if you look shoulder attachment right down here, shoulder attachment right and left, you have a thing here called back attachment that's not shown here. And this is what's holding your array for things like capes and backpacks. Now, from what I could tell, the reason that they left that out is because that particular item, if it's a cape, has skeletal mesh in it, and it can be used to, you can simulate it with physics and cloth and allow it to flap in the wind and things like a cape would do. If you assigned that here and put it on the master pose component, the animation data from the animation blueprint wouldn't have any information to send to that cape, and it would just be a stiff object on the back of the character. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second when we get into to what we're doing here. Now, normally what I would do after I had located my characters, I would go and I would find the skeleton. Well, in this case, it's the base skeleton. So we want to set this up for remapping our animation data on there. So we pull up the base skeleton and we go to the Retarget Manager. We're going to go in here to select rig, and we want to get our humanoid rig. Now, this will automatically map certain things like the root and the pelvis. We just want to go through and look at these: root, pelvis, spine. These are all mapped. Generally, these will be correct. If you go to the Show Advanced window, though, what you notice is that some of the hand information is missing, so we have to map that. And as I've talked about in other videos, Synty really only has a 3-finger hand for the characters. So you have a thumb, an index finger, and then a finger, which basically is your middle, ring, and pinky. So to set these values for proper retargeting, we assign finger to all 3 of those values. So in this case here, index 01 left, we can pull down our little mapping thing and go and look for it in here. Index finger 01L will be the sign for that, and then we're going to do index finger 02 and index finger 03. If we go to our middle finger, this is actually just called finger 1 left, finger 2 left, finger 3 left. I've covered this in other videos quite a bit. Pinky 1 left would be also finger 1, and we'll do finger 2 and finger 3 for the rest of the pinky, and the same thing for the ring finger. So we'll take our ring finger and assign that to finger 1 left, finger 2 left, and finger 3 left as well. Okay, now the thumb is already mapped correctly. We can scroll down a little bit further and no arm twist, but we do want to go to our index for the right, and we can scroll down here and you'll see that there is an index finger 1_R and an index finger, again just scroll down, index finger 02R and an index finger 03R. The middle finger is going to be just finger 1R, finger 2R, and finger 3R for the rest of the middle. And the pinky will be the same way, finger 1R, finger 2R, and finger 3R. And then we'll do the same thing for the ring finger, finger 1R, finger 2R, and finger 3R. And then the thumb is already mapped correctly. Again, no upper or lower arm twists. And then you have a ball that is on the character, so you can keep that on there. Same thing for the right. Now, there's no animation data for these for the root from the foot and all that kind of stuff, so you really don't need to assign this data in here, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it in. And the only thing you want to do is just make sure that everything's mapped, as I said here, and that the preview mesh is assigned. And you can go ahead and just hit the save. And this is on SK character base 01 skeleton, which belongs to the Synty character. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over and we're going to find our third person blueprint. And actually the third person blueprint has your third person character. This is one way you can find the mannequin mesh. But we just know in here that it's under mannequin character mesh. And we're going to go and get the UE4 mannequin skeleton and open this up and set it for retargeting. So we'll just take that and say select humanoid rig. And essentially it's ready, but what we want to do is we want to modify this pose to match the pose of the Synty character, which is currently in a T pose. So what we're going to do is we're going to just set up a couple options here. So for the upper arm, we're going to take this and swing it up 50. I like to take the lower arm down 10. And I like to take the lower arm back 30. And if you look at that from the top down, you'll see that it's actually straightens his arm out pretty good like that. And then I also like to take his wrist up and move that up like 20. So we'll go here and move that up about 20. And that straightens his arm out pretty good. We'll do the same thing over here with the upper arm. We'll go up 50. We'll take his lower arm down 10. And back 30. And this tool allows you to move in different directions, so I don't know if you've used this before, but if not, that's pretty straightforward. Now what we'll do is we'll move his hand up 20. And the other improvement, you can go over here to the snapping rotation grid value and put this down to 2.812 and go in here and grab his right thigh and move that in 2.81. And do the same thing on the left side and move that in 2.81. And it just moves his legs a little closer together to match kind of how the Synty character is. Now that we've modified this pose, we want to go to the Modify Pose window and hit Use Current Pose. And then we want to save this. So now we have a T-pose character for both of the things. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the animation folder for the mannequin, and we're going to right click on the third person anim BP and say retarget anim blueprint, duplicate anim blueprints and retarget, and we're going to select our SK base 01 skeleton from Synty as the target skeleton for this process. The source is the mannequin and the Synty character is the target. You can see that these poses now are pretty close. They look pretty good to me. If I hit change down here in the folder, what I like to do is I go to the character folder. So I go to Modular Characters. I'm going to right click on this and say new folder. And I just create a folder called RT_anims, which for me just means retarget animations. And I hit OK. And I'm going to now hit retarget with these. Well, that's fun. The autosave package, since that came through, I have to go and do that again. So retarget animation blueprint, select the character, and change the directory. Now the directory's already been created, so I can just select it here and hit OK. But we can leave our default settings on here and just hit retarget. And what it should do is it should pull a copy of the animations for the Synty character into our RT_anims modular character folder. And the asterisk on these means that you need to save them, so I'm going to hit Save All, Save Selected, and let it store those. If you double click on the third person idle animation there. For example, you'll see that our character is standing there, and we also have the third person run, third person walk, and third person jump, which is just the loop. Now, those things all correspond to the third person animation blueprint in the anim graph default state machine. So you have your idle run blend space, which uses the idle, and it uses the walk, and it uses the run. So if you take this green node, you can move this around. That's how your character transitions from idle into walking into running. Okay, and that blend space is pulled into the animation blueprint there, as I said, in the state machine. For the idle run state, the jump start has the third person jump loop, but all these have been retargeted now to your character. And you can also look at here if you want the states to get from idle and run into a jump start, a jump loop, or a jump end. These were all from the mannequin, but they are now applied to the Synty character. Now the problem is, the way that I normally would have done this is I would normally go into the blueprint for the third person BP. I would pull up the third person character. I'd go in here to the mesh, and I'd say I want this mesh to be my Synty character, SK character base 01 mesh, and you'll see it in the viewport. And I have an animation blueprint that I just created. I want to rename that real quick so that we know that it's for Synty. So I can go back to the modular character folder in the RT anims folder, and I'm going to change the name of this third person anim BP. I'm going to call that the Synty underscore anim BP, just like that. And if I go back here into the blueprint for the third person character, highlight the mesh, I can now pick that as the anim class. And when I do that, you'll see here that he now has that thing on there. But here's what's going to happen. That guy can run around, but he's not creating any of those random meshes and outfits and things like that, because that data is not plugged in to this particular blueprint. Okay, so another thing you could do is you could go in here to the game mode and select game mode as third person, and under your default pawn class you could have picked the Synty character, which is in here, which is BP modular character. Now when you hit play, you'll see this is still my third person character over here. We could validate that by going back to mesh and putting this back to our SK mannequin. I just want to show you kind of a little bit of what's going on in here. This was kind of an interesting thing to figure out, but for whatever reason, let's go back there, mannequin, and our anim class in here would be third person anim BP. So we'll go back and save that. And when we go back to play, of course, even though I've picked BP modular character, my default pawn class is still this guy. If I delete this, it would let me bring in the other character, but that character modular BP character, if you go and look at this, it doesn't have anything with a spring arm or anything like that in here, so it doesn't really work the way we want it to. So here's what we're going to do to fix that. We're going to leave our thing in here as a third person character. When I hit play, it should bring back my pawn. Okay, now we're going to go into the third person character blueprint. We're going to tell it that we want our mesh to be, let me stop this, we want our mesh to be the Synty character like we did earlier. So we're going to say SK character base 1 mesh, and the Synty anim BP is driving that. And then what we're going to do in our third person, or in our modular character blueprint, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to tell it that we want to use that mesh. We want to use SK character 1 base, and the anim class is going to be Synty anim BP. And now we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take our third person character, and underneath of the options up here, we're going to file, reparent blueprint, and what you want to do is you want to pick that that modular character, so BP modular character. And when you pick that, what's going to happen is it's going to pull in all of the parent code from the BP modular character, which randomizes this guy and gives him animation. And you can save this. Now, when I hit play, lo and behold, I will be one of the random people. And I can do this again and again. Now, you'll notice in one of these right here, you have an issue with the backpacks. Okay, and I'm going to show you an easy fix for that right now. So if I go into the third person character, I'm going to pull this in here, and I'm also going to pull up the one for the modular character so we can look at the settings on both sides. But under modular character, if I scroll down to that backpack attachment or back attachment, the problem that I think it is, I'm not 100% sure if somebody else knows the answer to this, they can let us all know. But if you go down here, the problem is that the collision preset is set to physics actor. And what I did is I changed mine to ragdoll. And if you change it to ragdoll, what it should do is it should allow it to flop around a little bit more comfortably, and it's not flapping in the wind like that. So again, we hit Alt play, we'll get a physics ragdolled cape. Okay, and Alt P again, we'll get our cape out there like that. So to me it looks pretty good. Again, every time I hit Alt P, I'm going to be a different character. So that is an easy way to reparent the blueprint to get all the code from the randomization process, and also to retarget the animations from the third person character default blueprint on here. Now if you wanted to add additional animations to this character, what you would do is you would bring in your animation pack and you would retarget that against that SK character base 1 skeleton. Retarget whatever animations you want to on there, and then you would go and fix them in the animation blueprint that you created here. So this is where you would assign those new animations in your state machines in there. Okay, my name's TC Made with TC Gaming. Hopefully this video helps someone to be able to explore those modular characters a little bit better and get things working on your end. And again, I'm glad to be back. I'm going to try and put out some more videos. I've got some stuff I want to talk to you guys about for the Infinity PBR resource pack that I bought a couple of months ago. I had some issues with that, but I've figured some things out to share with you. So I'll have some new content coming out soon. Thanks again for watching. You guys stay safe and take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.